The silence has been shattered, and the echoes are deafening. For weeks, the nation held its breath, waiting for a single word from the man at the center of the storm, Police Minister Bheki Cele. And now, after Matlala's explosive, raw, and devastating testimony laid everything bare, Cele has finally stepped into the light to give his side. But let me ask you this right now: do you believe a word of it? Or is this just another masterclass in political survival, a calculated performance meant to muddy the waters while the public's rage is still white hot? What Matlala described wasn't just an allegation, it was a portrait of a system so broken, so corrosive, that it chills the blood. And now, the man tasked with upholding justice is the one who has to explain himself. Stick with me, because this isn't about politics anymore, this is about a fundamental betrayal of trust, and every single detail we unpack today will prove it. The bombshell dropped not in a courtroom, but in the court of public opinion, delivered with a quiet, devastating conviction that no polished press conference could ever match. Matlala didn't just speak, she bore witness. She painted a picture of promises made in shadowed rooms, of assurances that evaporated like mist, leaving behind only the cold, hard reality of abandonment. Her words weren't crafted by spin doctors, they were etched in pain and frustration. And in the void that followed her statement, a question hung in the air, heavier than lead: where was Bheki Cele? His absence was a roar. It was interpreted by millions as guilt, as arrogance, as a blatant disregard for a citizen he is sworn to serve and protect. That silence became its own kind of confession. So imagine the tension when the news broke that Minister Cele would finally break that silence. The anticipation wasn't for clarity, but for confrontation. The public, still reeling from Matlala's account, had already begun weaving a narrative of their own, one of powerful men and shattered lives. And when Cele took his place before the microphones, it wasn't just a press briefing, it was an arena. You could feel it through the screen. The usual confident swagger seemed tempered, but was that contrition or merely caution? The first words out of his mouth would set the tone for everything. Would he acknowledge the profound hurt? Would he take any responsibility? Or would we get the standard script of deflection? He began, as they often do, by affirming his respect for the process and for Miss Matlala's right to speak her truth. But listen carefully to that phrase, her truth. It's a subtle linguistic tool, isn't it? It implicitly suggests there are multiple versions of reality, that her painful experience is subjective, while his forthcoming facts will be objective. He then launched into a timeline, a methodical recounting of meetings and correspondence, a bureaucratic defense against a deeply human tragedy. He spoke of task teams, of directives given, of protocols followed. It was the language of the state, cold and impersonal, a stark contrast to the visceral, emotional language Matlala used. Which do you think resonates more with a person who has been wronged, a file reference number or a tear? He addressed specific points from Matlala's account, not with empathy, but with counterclaims. Where she spoke of being ignored, he produced logs of phone calls. Where she described feeling threatened, he described robust security measures. It was a point-by-point rebuttal designed not to heal, but to win, to legally and technically dismantle the allegations thread by thread. But here's what I want you to consider: can a phone log ever capture the tone of a conversation? Can a security report quantify a feeling of dread in the pit of one's stomach? He was arguing in the realm of facts, while the public's outrage lives in the realm of feeling. And in that gap, trust evaporates completely. Then came the moment that will be dissected for weeks. Cele was asked directly, "Minister, do you accept any fault in how this situation was handled? Do you owe Matlala an apology?" He paused. The room leaned in. His answer was not a yes or a no, it was a masterpiece of conditional phrasing. He said he regretted the breakdown in communication and regretted that Miss Matlala feels let down by the system. Did you catch that? He regretted her feelings, not the actions that caused them. He apologized for her perception, not for any concrete failure by his office. This is the oldest trick in the political playbook: express sympathy for someone's emotional state without admitting your role in creating it. So I'm asking you, in the comments right now, does that sound like a real apology to you? But the true lightning rod of his response was his characterization of the bombshell itself. He called it unfortunate and potentially damaging to ongoing processes. He warned against trial by media. Now, on the surface, that sounds reasonable. doesn't it? We should let investigations run their course. But think about the context. When a person feels the systems of justice have failed them, utterly and completely, to whom else are they supposed to turn? Is the media not the last resort for the powerless? By framing her public plea as an unfortunate disruption, isn't he effectively blaming the victim for speaking out too loudly? Isn't he asking for her to go back into the quiet, dark room where her concerns first began to fester? This is where the real anger sets in, because this pattern is terrifyingly familiar. A shocking allegation emerges. The public cries out for accountability. The official response is a glacial, procedural crawl, wrapped in the language of patience and due process. And slowly, the news cycle moves on. The heat dies down. The powerful remain in place, and the citizen is left alone, bearing the full weight of their trauma. Cele's response, in its cold, procedural tone, feels like the first step in that exact playbook. It is designed to take the explosive, emotional fuel of Matlala's testimony and smother it under a blanket of paperwork and procedure until the fire goes out. But will we let it? Let's rewind for a second and think about what Matlala actually risked. She didn't just make a statement, she painted a target on her back. She challenged one of the most powerful figures in the country's security apparatus. She did so knowing she would be scrutinized, discredited, and possibly isolated. She did it because she felt she had no other choice. That is raw courage. Now contrast that with the risk Bheki Cele took in his press conference. He risked some bad headlines for a few days. He read from a prepared statement, flanked by advisors, with the full weight of a government ministry behind him. One of these people bet their entire sense of safety and peace of mind. The other bet a minor dip in public perception. Who do you think is telling the truth? The one with everything to lose, or the one with an institution to protect? And here's the crucial twist that Cele's timeline can't explain away: the erosion of trust is a process, not an event. Matlala's bombshell wasn't a single lie she heard, it was the final, crushing culmination of 100 small silences, a dozen missed calls that weren't returned, a series of assurances that turned out to be empty. You can't rebut a feeling of abandonment with an email timestamp. You can't defend against a sinking feeling of betrayal with a meeting agenda. The public understands this on a gut level. They've lived it in their own interactions with indifferent officials. So when they hear Cele's technical defense, they don't hear truth, they hear the voice of every official who ever passed the buck on a problem that was destroying their life. Now, Cele did make one firm declaration. He stated that the law must take its course and that any illegal activity, from any quarter, must be investigated. It was a strong line, delivered with force, but it's a safe line. It's what he's supposed to say. The real test won't be in those words, but in the weeks to come. Will there be a transparent, independent investigation into the entire saga, including the conduct of his own office? Or will we see the slow, quiet burial of the case under a mound of administrative inertia? Will the minister himself proactively appear before any inquiry, or will he hide behind his title? Your skepticism here isn't just allowed, it's required. This story taps into something far deeper than one minister or one citizen. It's a fractal of a national disease, the disease of impunity. It's the gnawing sense that there is one set of rules for the connected and powerful, and another for the rest of us. When Cele speaks from his podium, he isn't just Bheki Cele the man, he is the living symbol of a system that many feel is fundamentally rigged. His every word is filtered through that pervasive belief. So even if, by some stretch, his factual rebuttal is 100% accurate, it likely won't matter, because the public has passed judgment on the system he represents. The verdict is in, guilty of failure. So where does this leave us? In a more dangerous place than before. Because now we have two parallel realities. In one, a grieving, wronged citizen has spoken her truth to power. In the other, a senior statesman has provided a point-by-point defense. They cannot both be completely true. This chasm is where hope goes to die. This is how societies fracture, not when a scandal breaks, but when the response to the scandal convinces people that justice is a fictional concept. The real bombshell wasn't Matlala's initial statement, it's the total, utter disbelief that now greets Cele's response. That is the political atom bomb. I want you to pause and think about this. If you were in Matlala's position, having lived through what she described, and you watched that press conference, what would you feel? Relief? Vindication? Or a soul-crushing wave of despair, realizing that the machinery of the state is now formally aligned against your version of events, that your pain has been translated into a series of administrative bullet points to be debunked? Tell me in the comments, what emotion do you think she felt watching that? The minister has had his say. He has broken his silence with a cascade of words that sought to rebuild a wall of authority. But sometimes, the more you explain, the less you are believed. His response felt less like a healing gesture and more like the first move in a legal and public relations war. It was a speech for the history books, not for the human being at the heart of it. And in doing so, he may have won the news cycle, but he is losing the people, heartbeat by heartbeat. This isn't over. In fact, Cele's statement is just the end of the beginning. The questions he left unanswered are louder than the ones he addressed. The demand for a truly neutral arbiter is now screamingly urgent. The coming days will be about pressure, public pressure, media pressure. Will we, as the public, have the stamina to keep this story alive, to demand that it doesn't fade into the background noise of another scandal? Or will we get distracted, allowing the closure of this case to happen behind closed doors, out of sight and out of mind? Ultimately, this is a test of our collective memory and our collective will. Matlala did her part. She stepped into the light, alone. Bheki Cele has done his part. He has recited the defense of the institution. Now, the ball is in our court. We decide what happens next. We decide whether this becomes a footnote or a turning point. We decide whether power remains unchallengeable, or if accountability can still be forced into existence. Your voice, right now, is not insignificant. Your comment, your share, your refusal to look away, that is the fuel for justice. So let me ask you the final, most important question, having heard both sides. Whose silence now speaks louder to you? The silence before Matlala's statement, or the chilling, procedural silence that has settled after Cele's response? The answer to that question will determine everything.